So hello and welcome to today's amazing mod showcase video. So before we begin, I need to clarify this mod is for PC only since it relies on Derpy's script loader, which is not available for Anniversary Edition or the console versions of Bully. Anyway, this mod, called Bully Tekken, completely overhauls the way Bully plays in nearly every single aspect you can imagine. It's not just a generic fighting switcher like we've seen hundreds of times, but it instead overhauls the entire control scheme and even NPC difficulty too, to be a bit more in line with the Tekken series, hence the name of course. However, I will say this mod also does feel like it's Yakuza inspired as well, and you'll see what I mean as we get into the video. So when the game starts, you get an intro credits message off Dorkless7, who is the creator of the mod, and you initially may notice that nothing seems to have changed. However, we hold down LT and then press any direction on the D-pad, and this is how we activate the mod, because this is how we change fighting style. Right is for preppies, up is for jock, left is for greasers, and down is for nerds. And Jimmy will adopt the stance of the style you've chosen, complete with a nice little icon at the bottom confirming your current stance. Some of you may see this and immediately think, well, we've had these kind of mods before, what's so special about this one? Well, this one is way more advanced, because you have to actually input your own combos. Instead of just hammering punch a few times and then it's over, this time you have to actually look at the 4 face buttons and make a combo accordingly. For example, A and X are for left and right punches, B is to kick, and press both A and X to grapple, or alternatively you can hold these buttons for a heavier attack too, and you have to mix and match combos as you see fit. Unlike the base game where, as I said, it's like press X 4 times then hold X for an overhead punch, now the control scheme is something like, say, press A, X, B, A, press A and X, then you hold A, just as an example. You'll also notice that Jimmy isn't auto blocking anymore, and this is where the 4 shoulder buttons come into play. Obviously left trigger is how you lock on by default, that part remains completely unchanged, but now LB is to duck, which is brought over from the boxing minigame, and similar to that, pressing left or right has Jimmy duck in that direction. RB is to quick step, which is useful if you're getting punched, and if you hold it Jimmy will do a roll instead. And the right trigger is now how you block, and thankfully Jimmy will only block when holding. The second you let go, he's open again. So the 3 shoulder buttons now actually play a pivotal role in your defense gameplay, and for such a small change, this alone completely changes Bully's gameplay drastically. Now as I said, to grapple you press X and A. On PlayStation controllers that of course be square and X, but if you hold these down it will give you a unique powerful attack. Like in the Greaser style it will give you Norton's bear hug, in the Preppy style it will give you Darby's 6-hit combo, and the jocks it will let you throw people away, like the jocks do during Ted's boss fight. Another change as well is if you manage to knock your opponent to the floor and you go up close to them, you can perform some ground attacks as well, just by going up close and then pressing the X button. Now another small change that actually feels way bigger than it is you know when Jimmy gets grappled or jumped and you have to press Y or triangle to reverse it? Well, not anymore, because that is now its own quick time event. If this happens to you, you only have a split second to press the button that flashes on screen, and it will not always be Y. It could be A, B or X as well, and it is completely random, and it really throws you off guard, since like me you're probably so accustomed to hitting Y, it's just natural muscle memory for you. It's little things like that which really make this mod great. Like it legitimately feels fresh and very challenging. Speaking of challenging actually, this mod really ups the ante on difficulty, and I wish I wasn't exaggerating, because NPCs do way more damage. I noticed the health bar was depleting much quicker than usual after being hit, which is also a fantastic addition to difficulty, if that's what you're looking for of course. And to give you an idea of how difficult the game has gotten, when I was trying out the mod I got my ass handed to me by Dan Wilson of all people in a 1v1. Yeah, Dan Wilson, not Damon West, not Biff Taylor, Dan Wilson. And separately I also got beaten up by a group of nerds, so this mod really does make groups of people feel genuinely threatening. Now obviously this is only a game, but it does add that weird sense of realism in a way. Like if you were attacked by 4 people in real life, the odds of you winning are very slim, and this mod kind of reflects that. I'm not sure if it's intentional or not, but I really do like it because it adds so much difficulty to the game, like you're seeing on screen. The sheer difference between simple missions like Greaser's challenge where you have to fight 6 enemies is night and day. I'll let the footage speak for itself here. Thankfully, if this is a bit too hard for you, you can lower the difficulty by going to Jimmy's dorm room, and you can choose between 3 settings. Average Joe I believe sets most of the stats to default like vanilla. where Jimmy's health is set to default and the NPCs will attack less frequently too. Alternatively, you can make the game extremely hard, where you can set counter timers, for example, to be human, cat-like, or like Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. So you combine that with Super Saiyan difficulty, and I'm sure Jimmy will go from king of the school to everybody's bitch in 3 seconds flat. But there's a possible challenge for some speedrunners. How fast can you 100% bully using only the nerd style on the hardest difficulty possible? Now, other options you get are just relatively small ones, just sort of like personal taste. For example, camera angles. The default one is, well, what it says, default, no changes at all. But then there's one that changes the camera to be more like Tekken, where in combat it's a bit more slow and dynamic. And then there's another one like punch out. Personally, I stick with default. It's the one I'm most accustomed to. The Tekken one is actually really quite nice and does give it a breath of fresh air. The punch out one I'm personally not that fond of. Some people may like that, but I don't think this kind of goes well with the gameplay. But as I said, that's my own personal preference. I think sticking with default or Tekken is probably fine. I also think Dorkless stopped NPCs using weapons as well. Ever since I installed the mod, excluding weapons that are featured in missions of course, I don't think I've seen nerds use firecrackers or preps use eggs. And yes, Jimmy himself can still use weapons, but due to the way the controls work now, you cannot change weapons when you're locking onto somebody, and Jimmy will always revert back to his default style if he holds a weapon. I should also clarify that is not an issue with the mod itself, that's actually an issue with Buddy itself. Because if you sometimes go around the map and you see an NPC with a firecracker, you'll notice they have Jimmy's animations as well, until they run out of ammo or manually switch weapons of course. Now speaking of Tekken, I know at the beginning of the video I said when you start the game up, it appears nothing may have changed. Well, if Jimmy's wearing his default uniform and his default buzz cut, you may notice Jimmy's outfit is different, because Dorkless also added in a Jin Kazuma outfit for Jimmy, who is one of the characters from the Tekken series of course. Which as said replaces the default uniform complete with wig. However, it only replaces the free mode outfit, so Jimmy will change outfits to his default uniform when he's in a cutscene and you get the point. Now, one other thing many of you may have noticed, in the footage at least, is when you're locking on, the interaction menu is disabled, so you can't really talk or taunt to people anymore. But you can still taunt, and this has changed a lot too. Because you need to hold LT and then press the right stick down, and Jimmy will do a unique taunt depending on his style, like the nerd dance or flexing his muscles. It's a very nice addition for sure. And a bonus fact about this is if you do this taunt on anybody minding their own business, it will instantly goad them into a fight with you without you even needing to hit them. Which means you can use this to instigate fights with non-click students, who otherwise would just run off. So now let's talk a little bit about bugs, because there are a few things to be wary of with the mod. For example, when you start a brand new game, you will run into some troubles in Welcome to Bullworth, since in the tutorial, as you'd expect, it says hold LT to block. But you hold LT, Jimmy locks on, but the mission isn't progressing. But don't worry, the mission is still passable by manually blocking by pressing down RT instead. Now as I'm making this, Welcome to Bullworth does actually have a game breaking issue, and Dorkless is working on a fix for this, which is the humiliation feature. Because Welcome to Bullworth won't pass until you humiliate Wade, and if the interaction menu is disabled, you can't do it. But as I said, Dorkless is working on a fix for that, so by the time he releases the mod fully, this should be fixed. I don't think I've also mentioned it, and I probably should have mentioned it earlier on in the video, but if you want to go back to Jimmy's default style, you hold down on the D-pad, not press, you have to hold it down. Because there are a few missions like A Little Help for example that need you to perform a certain move, like the uppercut. And obviously you can't do that if you're in say, jock style. So I believe that Dorkless added that as a bit of a foresight, because that way then you don't get kinda soft locked in the game. You know, which means you'd have to uninstall the mod, do say A Little Help, then reinstall the mod. So this is a fantastic workaround, which means you still get to play with the mod, and you know, still do all the missions as you would normally. I believe there are also a few other missions where you should revert back to Jimmy's default style to prevent issues, but as I said, I haven't played through the entire game with this yet, so yeah, make of that what you will. Now, even though Dorkless has supplied a nice little control graphic, some of these controls won't work depending on your style. For example, the Y button, it says it's to kick, alongside the B button, but from my experience the Y button is completely useless outside the greaser style because it doesn't seem to do anything. Likewise, the nerd style seems to lack a proper grapple, so unlike all the other styles where you would grab them and then punch them straight in the head, the nerds will just push them, and the jocks don't have any kick attacks, so B and Y seem to go completely unused. Again, I want to clarify this is not the fault of Dorkless, this is just how Buddy's fighting styles are naturally. Like the nerds don't have any grapple attacks at all, and the greasers are the only ones who have more than one kick move. And, you know, the jocks don't have any kick attacks either, so how can your map say a kick attack if one doesn't exist? Something to note as well is Dorkless also said that while Tekken was the main inspiration for the mod, he also brought back quite a few beta features. If you've seen the Dennis Opal concept, you may recognise some of these. Complete side note, but during the beginning of the video I did say that this mod also feels like it's Yakuza inspired. Not just because of the font style changes and the UI HUD that is somewhat reminiscent of the HUD found in Yakuza 0 and Kiwami, but because when I looked through the files, the texture files were also called YKZ, not TEK for Tekken like you'd expect. So I do believe this mod was supposed to be Yakuza inspired to begin with, but then kind of changed to Tekken down the line, but just something to note. And yeah, I also should confess I've never actually played Tekken. Well, I mean I played it on the PS1 for a demo disc, but yeah, I've never actually owned any of the Tekken games. I don't even own any on Steam, so yeah. But this is kind of what I mean when I say about how it feels like Yakuza. Because if you played like the Yakuza, well, pre-Ichiban Yakuza games of course, and if you've also played like say Judgment, you might recognise the HUD changes, you know, when you change styles. But yeah, in closing though, this is an absolute must-have mod for Bully. Even if you're not a fan of Tekken, because the massive overhaul it gives the game, it makes it feel fresh. Like this is a mod that does not make Bully feel like the game we all know. It brings the game very up to date, control wise and difficulty wise. Like if you're the kind of person out there who's always said Bully is way too easy, you really should check this mod out. I know I'm just going to repeat myself again, but the difficulty it adds to the game makes it feel completely brand new. And if Rockstar were to ever like properly remake Bully from the ground up, they really should go with a control scheme like this, not just hammer X a few times then you're done. These are the kind of controls a game like Bully needs. But yeah, I'll leave a link to Dorkless in the description below. Thank you for watching this review, and have a great day.